Hi, welcome to this week's Speaking of Settlements. I'm Mark Wallstrom. In last week's commentary on the question of how much commission does a structured settlement broker get paid, I mentioned two key areas that I wanted to expand upon. That first one is transparency and pricing, which is the subject of this week's commentary. Now, the event which is driving a lot of this discussion, the class action suit against AIG structured settlements, and the claims of a RICO-level conspiracy with settlement brokers nationwide, is raising some key issues related to how structured settlement annuities are priced, who's paid, and how pricing and payment should be disclosed to the vulnerable end user of the product, that user typically being a personal injury victim. As I stated last week, the standard commission of 4% on all premium placed is consistent across all markets. You send in premium as the agent, you get paid 4%. What could be simpler than that? However, nowhere in that entire process is the compensation or its impact on the pricing of the annuity plan disclosed to the annuitant, to their legal counsel, and the structured settlement agent and the life insurance company and the casualty company who are negotiating the settlement tell you nothing. There's no disclosure in pre-sale literature, in the applications or in court proceedings, other than a few small number of states or counties that have disclosure statutes, and those statutes typically are in cases involving minors or incompetence. In the vast majority of structured settlements, there's no clear disclosure of how the pricing was arrived at, what the commission is, who the agent actually is, and if there's any commission split arrangements between the structured settlement brokers who are involved in the case. Now, settlement professionals at this point are probably throwing up their hands and saying, what difference does it make? Their point being that the commission has been baked in, so to speak, to the pricing for decades. No one ever asked, and the actual client buying the annuity is the casualty company, so they're thinking it's, the injured party isn't even the buyer. According to their logic, they're simply the recipient of a cash flow that happens to be provided by an annuity company, selected by the defendants in most cases. So who cares about the commission and pricing disclosure? Well, as the AIG class action case seems to indicate, as did the Spencer versus Hartford case, which ended the Hartford's commission rebating program on structured settlements, trial lawyers, consumer advocates, judges, and increasingly regulators all seem to care a lot about this. Many are in fact taking a very dim view of this opaque process that it's often filled with potential conflicts of interest. Further, some of our profession's biggest competitors, such as trust companies, investment advisors, and others, are making the profession's lack of disclosure in pricing and commissions a big issue in their presentations to injury victims and their lawyers. They're highlighting the level of regulatory supervision that they need to adhere to and the fiduciary standard that they are required to uphold when dealing with the injury victim. Now, I'll discuss the fiduciary standard issue next week, but for this week, let's just reflect on the fact that if I, as an agent, sell a non-structured annuity to a consumer, I'm required to do the following. I have to provide a full company illustrated term sheet explaining the pricing, the returns, liquidity costs, surrender charges, and ownership and beneficiary rights, and this must be signed by the owner and the annuitant. I'm also required to do a full suitability interview with the client to determine their assets, income, sophistication, understanding of the product, and how we arrived at the decision that this particular annuity makes sense for them. And the client has to sign the disclosure agreement, and they have to initial the illustration, and I must, under penalty of perjury, sign that same statement of disclosure that the information is true to the best of my belief. Now, few, if any of these things are required when we write a structured settlement annuity contract for people who are typically very unsophisticated, badly injured, or impaired. Now, my question to the structured settlement profession is this. How long do you feel that this major, glaring difference in standards is going to continue in a world where disclosure and fiduciary standards are becoming the norm across all financial sales and investments? In short, our failure to simply follow the same standards that are required of any life or annuity agent when selling these contracts is coming back to bite the structured settlement annuity profession, and it's time to change voluntarily before change is forced on us by outside agents. The AIG class action and RICO suit might seem like a distraction to some in the settlement profession. I can promise you that it is much bigger than that, and that structured settlement professionals need to take this head on and change our disclosures, our pricing, and sales practices to at the very least match those required of us in non-structured settlement sales. This is Mark Wallstrom, and I want to thank you again for tuning in. I'll be back again next week with a look at the issue of fiduciary standards and structured settlements here on the Settlement Channel.